Jiwan gripped the controls of his cargo ship as another blast shook the hull. Through the viewport, he watched the massive alien vessel tear apart the colony ship like paper. The humans inside never had a chance. "We need to go now," Yuna said from her navigator seat. Her fingers flew over the communication controls, trying to send a warning to other ships. "They'll see us if we stay." The alien ship was unlike anything Jiwan had seen before. It glowed with purple energy and moved without any visible engines. The humans called them Valdari, though no one knew much about them. What everyone did know was simple. When the Valdari showed up, entire planets went quiet. Kai looked up from his engineering station, his young face pale with fear. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures. Whatever they used to destroy that ship, it didn't even touch their power reserves." Jiwan made the hardest decision of his life. He turned the ship away from the dying colony vessel and activated the jump drive. As space twisted around them, the last thing he saw was the Valdari ship, moving toward the nearby human settlement on Kepler-7. 3 days later, they received the news. Kepler-7 was gone. Not destroyed, simply gone. No debris, no survivors, no trace that humans had ever lived there. It was the same story across the outer rim. The Valdari were moving through human space like a wave, and nothing could stop them. On the Valdari command ship, Overlord Thexnari studied the reports with mild interest. These humans were like all the others, weak, primitive, and completely helpless against superior technology. His empire had conquered over 3,000 species in the same way. The pattern never changed. "How many worlds have they colonized?" he asked his aide, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms. 47 worlds, Overlord, plus their home system. "Our scouts report they have basic space travel and simple weapons. Nothing that could threaten us," Thexnari nodded. The humans would receive the standard ultimatum. Submit to Valdari rule and serve the Empire, or face complete extinction. In 3,000 years, only 12 species had chosen extinction. The rest understood the wisdom of surrender. Back on Earth, Admiral Wu Jin sat in the emergency council meeting. The room buzzed with panicked voices as government leaders argued about their response to the alien threat. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others suggested fleeing to distant systems. A few talked about fighting, but their voices were quickly shouted down. "We have 48 hours to give them our answer," Wu Jin said, reading from the alien message that had arrived that morning. The translation was perfect, as if the aliens understood human language better than humans did. "Submit to their rule or they will eliminate our entire species." President Kim slumped in her chair. "What choice do we have? Our best warships are barely faster than cargo vessels compared to their technology. Our weapons can't even scratch their shields. Fighting them would be suicide." Dr. Nari, the head of the xenobiology department, raised her hand. "I've been studying the recordings from the Outer Rim attacks. There's something strange about their technology. It's all energy-based. No kinetic weapons, no physical projectiles. Everything they do relies on energy manipulation." "So what?" General Park asked. "Energy weapons are more advanced than what we have." "Maybe," Nari said. "But there might be a reason they don't use kinetic weapons. Maybe they can't defend against them properly." The room fell silent. It was a thin hope, but it was something. Meanwhile, in a secret military facility beneath the Australian desert, Colonel Hayuk worked with a small team of engineers and strategists. While the politicians debated surrender, Hayuk was planning something that had never been tried before in galactic history. He was planning to fight back. "The key is surprise," he told his team. "Every species they've conquered followed the same pattern. Submit or fight desperately and lose quickly. No one has ever tried a real war against them." Captain Sua, the team's weapons specialist, pulled up holographic displays of human military assets. "We have advantages they don't expect. Our nuclear weapons, our kinetic bombardment systems, our missile technology. It's all primitive compared to their energy manipulation, but that might work in our favor." "How?" asked Commander Minho, who would lead the first strike teams if they got approval. "Because they've never had to defend against it," Sua explained. "Imagine a master swordsman who has never seen a gun. The gun is crude compared to a sword, but it will still kill the swordsman if he doesn't know how to defend against it." Hayuk nodded. "We run silent operations. Hit them hard and fast, then disappear. Make them think twice about the cost of conquering humanity." The plan was insane. Humans had been in space for less than 200 years. The Valdari had ruled the galaxy for 3,000. But sometimes insane plans were the only ones that worked. On the outer rim, Jiwan's cargo ship had joined a small fleet of human vessels, fleeing toward the edge of known space. They had supplies for maybe 6 months and nowhere to go that the Valdari couldn't follow. But at least they were alive. "Captain," Yuna called from her station, "I'm picking up a transmission from Earth. It's on all frequencies, maximum power." Jiwan frowned. "Put it through." Admiral Wujin's voice filled the bridge, calm and steady despite the chaos surrounding Earth. "This is Earth Command to all human vessels in space. In 6 hours, we will broadcast our official response to the Valdari ultimatum. All ships are advised to prepare for unexpected developments." Kai looked confused. "What does that mean?" Jiwan wasn't sure, but something in the Admiral's voice made him think that humanity wasn't going to go quietly. He changed course, heading back toward Earth. If his species was going to make its last stand, he wanted to be there. Across human space, other ships were making the same decision. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining vessels, and the few military ships humanity possessed, all turning toward Earth. They didn't know what their leaders had planned, but they knew they wouldn't face it alone. The Valdari fleet approached the Sol system with confidence. By tomorrow, the humans would be just another conquered species in the vast Valdari Empire. The galaxy would return to its normal, peaceful order. They had no idea that everything was about to change. The broadcast went out on every frequency humans could access. Admiral Wu Jin stood in the Earth Command Center, looking directly into the camera that would transmit his words across the galaxy. Behind him, the great blue marble of Earth hung in space, beautiful and defiant. "To the Valdari Empire," Wu Jin began, his voice steady and clear. "You have given humanity 2 choices. Submit to your rule or face extinction. We reject both options. We choose a third path. We choose war." On the Valdari command ship, Overlord Thexnari stared at the transmission in complete confusion. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever responded this way. "The translator must be malfunctioning. Replay the message," he ordered. His aide's 4 hands trembled as he activated the replay. The human's words came through exactly the same. "We choose war." "This is impossible," Thexnari said. "They must understand their situation. Our technology is superior in every way. They cannot win." "Perhaps they are insane, Overlord," his aide suggested. "No," Thexnari said slowly. "No species survives long enough to reach space if they are truly insane. There must be something else." He was right to be worried. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Commander Minho floated in the cramped bridge of the modified mining ship Busan Runner. Around him, 12 other converted vessels waited in complete radio silence. They had been drifting here for 3 weeks, their crews living on recycled air and hope. "Contact in 30 minutes, whispered his communications officer. The Valdari patrol ship was following its usual route, scanning for human vessels fleeing the inner system. It had no idea that this time, the humans weren't running. Captain Sua had spent months preparing for this moment. The mining ships carried loads of pure iron ore instead of their usual cargo, simple, primitive iron, the kind of material the Valdari probably hadn't thought about in centuries. But iron moving at significant fractions of light speed was still iron moving at significant fractions of light speed. "All ships, this is Minho. Begin acceleration on my mark. Remember, we get one shot at this." The Valdari patrol ship was beautiful in its own way. It glowed with soft purple energy, its hull shifting and flowing like liquid metal. The crew inside felt completely safe behind their energy shields, protected by technology that had never failed them. Mark. 13 mining ships fired their cargo holds like massive shotguns. Thousands of tons of iron ore, accelerated by fusion drives, streaked toward the Valdari vessel at incredible speed. The energy shields that could stop laser beams and plasma bolts were designed for energy, not solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The impact tore the Valdari ship apart in seconds. Minho watched the debris scatter across space and felt a mix of triumph and terror. They had done it. They had actually killed a Valdari ship. But now the real war would begin. On Earth, Dr. Nari was making another important discovery. She had been studying brain scans of humans who had been near Valdari ships, looking for signs of the psychic manipulation that the aliens used to control other species. What she found surprised her. "The psychic attacks aren't working on us," she told the emergency council. Our neural patterns are different from other species. The Valdari can't get into our minds the way they do with their other subjects. Admiral Wu Jin leaned forward. Are you certain? Completely. I've tested it on volunteers. We can hear their psychic communications, but they can't control us or read our thoughts. It's like we're invisible to their most powerful weapon. This news spread quickly through the human fleet. While other species fell to Valdari mind control within hours of first contact, humans remained free. It was a small advantage. But in a war against impossible odds, every advantage mattered. The first human victory sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The news traveled along secret communication networks that the Valdari didn't monitor, carried by resistance members and hidden rebels who had been waiting for a sign of hope. On the water world of Aquanus, the enslaved Cathari heard the report and dared to believe. On the mining colonies of the Hercules sector, the Zephyrian workers whispered to each other in their native language, spreading the impossible story. The humans had fired first. The humans had won. Jiwan received the news while his cargo ship was still racing back toward Earth. Yuna stared at the communication display in disbelief. They actually did it, she said. They destroyed a Valdari ship. Kai was already running calculations at his engineering station. If they can do it once, they can do it again. Captain, we should offer our help. Jiwan thought about the colony ship he had watched die, about the settlement on Kepler 7 that simply vanished. Set course for the asteroid belt. If there's going to be a fight, we're going to be part of it. Across human space, other ships were making the same decision. The merchant marine, the exploration fleet, even tourist vessels, all turning toward the battle zones. Humanity was going to war, and they were going to do it together. The Valdari response was swift and brutal. Overlord Thexnari personally led a fleet of 50 ships toward Earth, intent on ending this rebellion before it could spread. But when his fleet arrived in the Sol system, they found it empty except for automated defense platforms and a few brave volunteers who stayed behind to buy time. The real human fleet was already moving through Valdari space, hitting targets across a dozen systems. They struck communication relays, supply depots, and isolated patrol ships. Each attack used the same tactic, kinetic weapons that the Valdari couldn't defend against, followed by immediate retreat. Captain Sua had been right about one thing. The Valdari were like master swordsmen facing guns for the first time. Their energy shields were useless against solid projectiles. Their psychic powers couldn't touch human minds. Their superior technology suddenly seemed less superior. But the humans were still vastly outnumbered and outgunned. For every Valdari ship they destroyed, the Empire had 100 more. The war was far from over. In his command ship, Thexnari studied reports from across his empire. 12 systems had been attacked. 17 ships had been destroyed. The humans were using tactics that no species had ever tried before. Hit-and-run attacks. Kinetic weapons, complete resistance to psychic control. Overlord, his aide said nervously. Perhaps we should consider negotiations. Thexnari's eyes blazed with anger. The Valdari Empire does not negotiate with primitives. Double the patrols. Triple the security around key installations. These humans want war? Then we will give them war such as the galaxy has never seen. But deep down, for the first time in his 800 years of life, Overlord Thexnari felt something he had never experienced before. He felt doubt. On a hidden asteroid base in the Tau Ceti system, Admiral Wu Jin received the latest battle reports. The casualties were heavy, but they were winning more than they were losing. More importantly, they were proving that the Valdari could be beaten. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving contact requests from 14 different species. They want to know if the reports are true. Wu Jin smiled grimly. The galaxy was waking up. After 3,000 years of silence, the oppressed peoples of the Valdari Empire were finally finding their voices. The war that would reshape the galaxy had begun. The message arrived on a frequency that the Valdari had never monitored. Captain Leah received it while her diplomatic ship hung in the shadow of a dead moon, far from any patrol routes. The transmission was in the clicking language of the Cathari, a species that had been enslaved for over 400 years. Human ship, this is shipwright Nexus leader Veltar. We have heard what you did to the purple demons. We want to help. Leah looked at her translator, hardly believing what she was hearing. The Cathari were master shipbuilders, forced to construct vessels for the Valdari fleet. If they joined the rebellion, they could build ships designed specifically to fight their former masters. This is Captain Leah of the Earth vessel Harmony. We would welcome your assistance. But you understand the risks? The response came immediately. We have lived with risk for 4 centuries, Captain. The risk of hope is better than the certainty of slavery. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place. Species that had been crushed under Valdari rule for generations were reaching out to the humans who had dared to fight back. Each offered what they could. The Zephyrians had incredible pilots. The Rockborn were master miners and engineers. The Void Dancers could move through space in ways that defied understanding. On the water world of Aquanis, Colonel Sunho led a team of human special forces through the underwater cities where the Kethari lived. The mission was simple but dangerous. Destroy the Valdari communication hub that controlled this entire sector. Remember, Sunho whispered to his team as they swam through the kelp forests that hid the city. We're not just fighting for humanity anymore. Half the galaxy is watching what we do here. The Valdari base was a crystal tower that rose from the ocean floor, pulsing with the purple energy that powered their technology. It was heavily defended, but the Valdari had never faced an attack from underwater. Their sensors were designed to watch the skies, not the seas. Sunho's team attached their explosive charges to the base of the tower, while Kethari rebels created distractions in other parts of the city. The charges were simple chemical explosives, crude compared to Valdari technology but effective against the crystalline structure. The explosion sent shockwaves through the entire ocean. The communication tower collapsed, taking with it the Valdari's ability to coordinate their forces across 7 star systems. In the confusion that followed, 3 Kethari construction facilities declared independence and began building ships for the rebellion. Back in the asteroid belt, Jiwan's cargo ship had been converted into a mobile command center. His bridge was now crowded with representatives from 6 different species, all planning coordinated attacks on Valdari positions. The key is timing, explained Commander Minho, pointing to a holographic display of the local star systems. We hit 12 targets simultaneously. The Valdari won't know which attack is the real threat and which are distractions. Yuna had become the rebellion's chief communications coordinator, her skills with human equipment allowing her to establish secure networks between the allied species. I've got confirmation from all strike teams. The Zephyrian pilots are in position around the supply depot at Rigel 7. The Rockborn mining ships are ready to assault the patrol base at Wolf 359. Young Kai had proven to be a genius at adapting human technology to work with alien systems. His modifications allowed human ships to interface with Kethari navigation systems and Zephyrian sensors, creating hybrid vessels that combined the best of all 3 technologies. Captain, Kai reported excitedly, the new engine modifications are working perfectly. We can match Valdari ships for speed now, and our armor can take at least 3 direct hits from their energy weapons. But the Valdari were learning too. Overlord Thexanari had begun studying human tactics, trying to understand how such a primitive species could be so effective. He ordered his scientists to develop countermeasures against kinetic weapons and deployed his most experienced commanders to hunt down the rebel fleets. The war's first major battle took place at the Nexus Gate, a natural hyperspace junction that connected 27 star systems. Control of the gate meant control of trade and movement across an entire sector of the galaxy. The Valdari had held it for 800 years. Admiral Wu Jin commanded the Allied fleet from the bridge of the Earth battleship Sol. Around him, 150 ships from 7 different species prepared for the largest space battle in their history. Human vessels armed with kinetic weapons, Kethari ships built for speed and stealth, Zephyrian fighters piloted by beings who could see in 4 dimensions. All ships, this is Admiral Wu Jin. Today we fight not just for our own freedom, but for the freedom of every enslaved world in the galaxy. Make them remember this day. The Valdari fleet was larger and more powerful, but they had never faced opponents who refused to follow the rules of galactic warfare. Human ships launched clouds of metal debris that confused Valdari sensors. Kethari vessels used their cloaking technology to appear and disappear like ghosts. Zephyrian pilots flew in patterns that seemed to violate physics. Captain Sua, now commanding her own squadron of modified destroyers, led the main assault on the Valdari battleship. Her ships fired everything they had, nuclear missiles, kinetic penetrators, even simple explosive shells, creating a wall of deadly projectiles that overwhelmed the enemy's energy shields. The Valdari battleship exploded in a burst of purple fire, taking with it the morale of the entire Imperial fleet. For the first time in their history, Valdari ships began to retreat from a battle they were losing. Dr. Nari watched the battle from her research vessel, studying how different species worked together against their common enemy. She had discovered something important. While humans were immune to Valdari psychic control, they could share this immunity with their allies through some kind of mental link that formed during combat. "It's remarkable," she reported to Admiral Wu Jin. "When our people fight alongside other species, they become temporarily immune to psychic attacks as well. We're not just teaching them how to fight the Valdari, we're teaching them how to be free." The victory at Nexus Gate changed everything. Within days, 6 more star systems declared independence from the Valdari Empire. Planets that had been silent for centuries began broadcasting their own rebellion messages. The galaxy was waking up and the sound was deafening, but Overlord Thexnari was not finished. As his empire crumbled around him, he made a decision that would either save his people or destroy them completely. He ordered the deployment of the Valdari's most terrible weapon, a device that could drain the life force from entire star systems. "If we cannot rule the galaxy," he declared to his war council, "then no one will." The device was called the Star Eater, and it had been used only once before, to destroy a species that had discovered the secret of Valdari technology. Now Thexnari planned to use it on Earth itself, to show the galaxy what happened to those who dared challenge Valdari supremacy. But he had underestimated the connections that humanity had built with other species. A Cathari spy in the Valdari command structure sent word of the weapon to the rebellion. A Zephyrian pilot volunteered for a suicide mission to destroy the Star Eater before it could be deployed. A Rockborn engineer shared the location of the secret facility where the weapon was stored. Colonel Hugh, the strategist who had planned humanity's first victory, was now planning the mission that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The target was the most heavily defended installation in Valdari space. The odds of success were impossibly small, but then again the odds had been impossible from the beginning. On a dozen worlds, resistance fighters looked up at the stars and saw hope instead of fear. The humans had shown them that the Valdari could be beaten. Now it was time to prove that freedom was worth any price. The rebellion was no longer just about humanity. It had become something bigger, a chance for the entire galaxy to choose its own destiny. And for the first time in 3,000 years, that choice seemed possible. The Star Eater facility hung in the void between galaxies, surrounded by a fleet of Valdari warships. It was a massive sphere of crystalline metal, pulsing with the dark energy that could drain life from entire solar systems. For 800 years, it had been the Valdari's ultimate threat, the weapon that guaranteed no species would ever dare rebel. Colonel Hayek studied the intelligence reports one more time. The facility was defended by 60 of the Valdari's best ships, each one more powerful than anything humanity had built. The weapon itself was protected by energy shields that could stop a supernova. Getting close enough to destroy it would require a miracle. Fortunately, miracles had become humanity's specialty. "The plan is insane," Admiral Wu Jin said, reading through Hyuk's proposal. "You want to use the entire rebel fleet as a distraction, while a single ship attempts to penetrate their defenses?" "Not a single ship," Hyuk corrected. "A single pilot in a Zephyrian stealth fighter, carrying a Rockborn quantum mine." The quantum mine was the rebellion's newest weapon, developed by combining human nuclear physics with Rockborn engineering and Cathari energy manipulation. It was small enough to fit in a fighter's cargo bay, but powerful enough to crack a moon in half. "The Zephyrians say their stealth technology can hide a ship from Valdari sensors," Hyuk continued, "and the Rockborn guarantee their mine will work. We just need to get it close enough." The pilot who volunteered for the mission was named Hana, a young Zephyrian who had lost her entire family to Valdari slavers. She could see in 4 dimensions, which allowed her to navigate through space in ways that seemed impossible to other species. If anyone could penetrate the facility's defenses, it was her. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the rebellion was winning victories that would have been unthinkable just months before. Captain Sua's weapons research had produced a new type of shield that could deflect Valdari energy weapons back at their own ships. Commander Minho's tactics had evolved into a form of three-dimensional warfare that used asteroid fields and gravity wells as weapons. Jiwan now commanded a fleet of 200 ships, a mix of human vessels and alien craft that had joined the rebellion. His cargo ship had been replaced by a Kethari battlecruiser, but he still kept Yuna as his navigator, and Kai as his chief engineer. "Captain," Yuna reported from her expanded communication station, "we're receiving surrender offers from 3 more Valdari star systems. The governors want to negotiate terms." It was happening all across the Empire. As more species joined the rebellion, Valdari control began to collapse. Planets that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly found themselves free. The psychological effect was devastating to Valdari morale. They had never imagined that their empire could simply fall apart. Dr. Nari had established research stations on a dozen liberated worlds, studying how different species could work together against psychic domination. Her discoveries were remarkable. When beings from multiple species formed close bonds through shared struggle, they became resistant to all forms of mental manipulation. "It's not just immunity," she explained to the rebel leadership. "It's empowerment." The Valdari ruled through fear and isolation, keeping species apart so they couldn't unite. But when they do unite, they become stronger than the sum of their parts. The proof of her theory came during the Battle of the Seven Suns, where a mixed fleet of humans, Cathari, Zephyrians, and Rockborn faced a Valdari armada twice their size. Instead of fighting as separate groups, the allied species formed integrated battle units that shared information and tactics in real time. Human gunners worked with Zephyrian pilots who could see attacks before they happened. Cathari engineers enhanced Rockborn mining equipment to create devastating weapons. The psychological link that Dr. Nari had discovered allowed them to coordinate their attacks with supernatural precision. The Valdari fleet was destroyed completely, with minimal losses to the rebellion. It was the most decisive victory in the war so far, and it proved that the alliance was stronger than either side fighting alone. But the real turning point came from an unexpected source. Donghae was a human mining engineer who had been captured by the Valdari early in the war. For months he had been held in a prison facility in the core systems, studied like a laboratory animal as the Valdari tried to understand human psychology. His escape had been a miracle in itself. The prison was located on a world with a methane atmosphere, surrounded by automated defense systems that could detect and destroy any ship within a light year. But Donghae had learned something during his captivity that changed everything. "They're afraid," he told the rebel council after his rescue. "The Valdari leadership is terrified. They've built their entire society around the idea that they're superior to every other species. But we've proven that's not true, and it's destroying them from the inside." Donghae had overheard conversations between Valdari commanders, discussions about retreat and surrender that would have been unthinkable a year ago. The Empire was experiencing its first civil war in 3 millennia, as different factions argued about how to respond to the rebellion. "Some of them want to negotiate," Donghae continued. "Others want to use the Star Eater on every rebel world. But they're all afraid of the same thing, that their own people will realize they don't have to obey orders anymore." This intelligence led to the rebellion's most ambitious operation yet. Instead of attacking Valdari military targets, they began broadcasting messages directly to Valdari civilians, using the same frequencies that the Empire used for official communications. Captain Leah, now the rebellion's chief diplomat, worked with alien psychologists to craft messages that would appeal to Valdari psychology. The broadcasts were simple but effective. They showed Valdari citizens what life was like on liberated worlds, where different species worked together in peace and prosperity. "We don't want to destroy you," Leah's message said, broadcast on every Valdari communication channel. "We want to show you that there's a better way to live. Join us and help us build a galaxy where everyone is free." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Valdari civilians began questioning their government's version of events. Some began hiding rebel sympathizers. A few even provided intelligence to help liberation efforts. Overlord Thexanari watched his empire crumble with growing desperation. His military commanders were defecting. His civilian population was in revolt. His most powerful weapon was about to be destroyed by a coalition of species he had always considered inferior. In his rage, he made a decision that sealed his fate. Instead of deploying the Star Eater against Earth, he ordered it turned on his own rebellious systems. If he couldn't rule the galaxy, He would burn it down before letting the rebels claim it. But the attack on the Star Eater facility was already underway. While the main rebel fleet created a massive distraction, engaging the Valdari defenders in a battle that lit up space for light years around, Hana piloted her stealth fighter through the chaos. Her Zephyrian senses allowed her to see paths through the battle that other pilots couldn't perceive. She slipped between energy blasts around exploding ships, through fields of debris that would have destroyed any normal craft. The quantum mine in her cargo bay hummed with barely contained power. "I'm through the outer defenses," she reported on a frequency that only G1 could hear. Beginning approach to the facility. The Star Eater loomed before her like a dark planet, its crystalline surface crackling with the energy of a dozen stolen suns. As she flew closer, she could feel the weapon's pull on her life force, a cold hunger that wanted to drain away her existence. "Remember," Kai's voice came through her communicator, "you need to get the mine to the exact center of the sphere. Anywhere else, and the explosion won't breach the core." Hana pushed her fighter to its limits, diving through defensive fire that could have vaporized a battleship. The Valdari were finally aware of her presence, but it was too late to stop her. She released the quantum mine and pulled away, her fighter's engines screaming as she fought to escape the blast radius. Behind her, the mine penetrated the Star Eater's core and detonated with the force of a collapsing star. The explosion tore through space and time itself, destroying not just the weapon, but the very concept of its existence. The dark energy that had powered the Star Eater was released back into the universe, healing wounds that the Valdari had inflicted across 3,000 years of conquest. Across the galaxy, enslaved worlds felt the change immediately. The psychic weight that had pressed down on them for generations was suddenly lifted. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy was truly free. The war was not over yet, but everyone knew that it soon would be. The Valdari Empire was finished, and a new age was about to begin. The Valdari homeworld had never seen a foreign fleet in its skies. For 3,000 years, it had been the untouchable heart of the galaxy's greatest empire. Now it was surrounded by ships from dozens of species, all united under the simple banner that humanity had created, a circle of stars representing the freedom of all worlds. Admiral Wu Jin stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship, looking down at the purple-hued planet below. The world was beautiful, with crystal cities that caught and reflected light in ways that seemed almost magical. It was hard to believe that such beauty had been the source of so much suffering. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the planetary government. Overlord Thexnari wishes to discuss terms." The war was effectively over. With the destruction of the Star Eater, the last Valdari resistance had collapsed. Their military was in retreat, their civilian population was in revolt, and their empire had fragmented into hundreds of independent systems. But Wu Jin knew that how the war ended would determine what kind of galaxy they would build from the ashes. "Tell them I'll meet with him," Wu Jin said. "But the negotiations will be public, broadcast to every world in the galaxy. No more secret deals or hidden treaties." The meeting took place in the ruins of what had once been the greatest monument to Valdari power, a crystal palace that could hold 1,000,000 beings. The rebellion had not destroyed it, but it had been abandoned when the Valdari government fled to underground bunkers. Overlord Thexnari looked smaller than Wu Jin had expected. Without his energy armor and psychic enhancers, he appeared to be just another being struggling to understand how his world had changed so completely. His silver skin was pale, his forearms moved nervously, and his ancient eyes held a mixture of defeat and confusion. "I do not understand," Thexnari said as they sat across from each other at a simple table. "Your species is primitive. Your technology is crude. How did you defeat us?" Captain Leah, serving as the chief negotiator, answered gently. "We didn't defeat you with technology, Overlord. We defeated you with an idea. What idea could be more powerful than the weapons of the Valdari Empire? The idea that every being has the right to choose their own path," Leah replied. "For 3,000 years you ruled by taking that choice away from others. But choice is more powerful than any weapon, because it gives people something worth fighting for." The negotiations took 3 days. Representatives from every species in the Alliance participated, sharing their stories of life under Valdari rule and their hopes for the future. Some wanted revenge, others called for the complete destruction of Valdari civilization. But in the end, they chose a different path. "We will not become what we fought against," Dr. Nari said during the final session. If we rule through force and fear, we will just create another empire. Instead, we offer you the same choice we offer everyone. Join us in building something better. The treaty they signed established the Galactic Cooperative Council, a voluntary association of free worlds. Each species would govern itself according to its own customs and beliefs, but they would work together for mutual defense and prosperity. The Valdari could join if they abandoned their imperial ambitions and made reparations to the worlds they had conquered. Thexnari signed the treaty with hands that shook from emotion rather than age. I have lived for 800 years, he said. I have seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, but I have never seen anything like what you have accomplished. Perhaps there is wisdom in your strange human concept of hope. The transformation of the galaxy began immediately. Worlds that had been forced to serve the Empire for centuries suddenly found themselves free to pursue their own interests. The Cathari began building ships for exploration rather than conquest. The Zephyrians established trade routes that connected previously isolated systems. The Rockborn shared their mining techniques with species that had never been allowed to develop their own resources. Jiwan found himself appointed as the first captain of the Galactic Exploration Service, commanding a ship crewed by beings from a dozen different species. His old cargo vessel had been replaced by a magnificent exploration ship, built with technology shared freely between former enemies. Captain, Yuna reported from her position at the communications station. We're receiving our first mission orders. There's a distress signal from an uncharted system, 50 light-years beyond what used to be Valdari space. Kai looked up from his engineering console, where he was integrating the ship's hybrid human Kethari Zephyrian systems. All systems are ready, Captain. The new engines can get us there in 6 hours instead of 6 days. For the first time in years, Jiwan smiled without reservation. They were explorers again, not warriors. The galaxy was full of wonders waiting to be discovered, and they had all the time in the universe to find them. Commander Minho had accepted a position training the new Galactic Defense Force, teaching the tactics that had won the war to a new generation of officers from every species. His classes were held on a space station orbiting a star at the exact center of the galaxy, symbolizing the unity that bound all worlds together. Remember, he told his students, we exist to protect freedom, not to impose it. If a world chooses isolation, we respect that choice. If they choose to be part of something larger, we welcome them. But we will never again allow anyone to take away another being's right to choose. Captain Sua had become the head of the Cooperative's research division, working with former Valdari scientists to develop technologies that healed rather than harmed. Their latest project was a device that could repair the environmental damage caused by 3 millennia of imperial exploitation. Dr. Nari established the Institute for Interspecies Understanding. On a world that had once been a Valdari prison planet, now it was a place where beings from different species could learn about each other, building the connections that would prevent future wars. The key to lasting peace, she wrote in her first annual report, is not just tolerance but genuine friendship between species. When we truly know each other, war becomes not just impossible, but unthinkable. Colonel Hayek, the strategist who had planned humanity's first victory, was elected as the first director of the Galactic Council. His job was to coordinate between the hundreds of member worlds, ensuring that the cooperative remained true to its founding principles. We must never forget, he said in his inaugural address, that freedom is not a destination but a journey. Each generation must choose to preserve and extend the liberty that we have won. The moment we take it for granted, we risk losing it forever. The Valdari themselves struggled with their new place in the galaxy. Many found it difficult to abandon the beliefs that had shaped their civilization for millennia. But others, particularly the younger generation, embraced the possibilities that freedom offered. A group of young Valdari scientists worked with human researchers to develop new forms of energy manipulation that could power entire star systems without draining life force from other beings. Their work would eventually lead to technologies that made interstellar travel as easy as crossing a street. 5 years after the war's end, the first Galactic Peace Festival was held on Earth. Beings from across the galaxy came to celebrate the anniversary of humanity's impossible victory. The festival was not just a commemoration of the past, but a celebration of the future they were building together. Jiwan walked through the festival grounds with his old crew, marveling at the sight of human children playing with young Cathari. Zephyrians teaching dance to amazed Rockborn, and former Valdari soldiers sharing stories with the beings they had once oppressed. Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this? Yuna asked, watching a group of mixed-species musicians performing a song that combined melodies from a dozen different worlds. Never, Jiwan admitted. When we first saw that Valdari ship destroy the colony vessel, I thought humanity was finished. I never imagined that we would become the catalyst for something this beautiful. Kai, now a young man rather than the frightened boy who had served on their cargo ship, pointed to a group of children building something together with blocks of different colors and shapes. Look at them. They don't see different species. They just see friends. This is what we fought for. Old Admiral Wu Jin, now retired but still respected as the architect of victory, gave the festival's closing speech. He stood before millions of beings, both in person and watching through broadcasts that reached every corner of the galaxy. We did not fight this war to prove that humans were superior, he said. We fought to prove that no one is superior to anyone else. We fought for the radical idea that all beings, regardless of their origin or abilities, have the right to determine their own destiny. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces from species that had once been enemies. Today the galaxy is free, not because we conquered it, but because we chose to share it. The Empire is dead, but what we have built in its place is far greater. A community of equals, bound together not by fear or force, but by hope and friendship. As the festival ended and beings began returning to their home worlds, they carried with them more than just memories. They carried the knowledge that the impossible had become possible, that freedom was worth any price, and that even the most powerful empire